Alright, and welcome back to Zero Cool Gaming, and today we're going to be doing a review of a game, or actually, it's a triple pack of games, but I only actually played through one of them, and it's called the Ultimate Stealth Triple Pack on the PS3.
Is everything in place?
Almost.
What do you mean, almost?
I have spoken with Montreal. The broadcast satellites are ours when we need them. A few weeks of discomfort, and the public will be primed for our recall.
And the clinics?
We control their purse strings. They will do as we say. I still think we should wait for the referendum. We can't afford to wait. America's Science Board convenes next month. But the mood among the delegates is shifting. I'm positive that given more time...
No. By going public with this discovery, Sarif is forcing our hand.
The world will not change overnight just because David Sarif wills it. Besides, we can do nothing until our biochip is ready.
I thought you said you were close.
Finding the correct nerve interface has proven more challenging than anticipated.
Alright, so what is this about? Well, it has 3 games on it. It has Thief, Hitman, and Deus Ex, Human Evolution. Now, of those 3 games, the only one that I played was Deus Ex, Human Evolution. Not that I didn't try the other 2. I did. Both Thief and Hitman. I made it a couple hours into the game before I put it down and never played them again. Now I know that I believe with both of these games, about halfway through, the main character changes their persona and their motivations, and they start working against those who hired them. I'm aware that these games do that. For me, though, it was the first half of the game that I couldn't get through. Yeah, I just couldn't. And I didn't even know that they were going to change personas later on in the game. But the way that the first half of the game is presented, I just couldn't get behind that type of persona, period. I guess you could say that I don't like being the bad guy, regardless of how that may change in the game later on. So, as a result, those are games that I just never completed, even though I own them. It's not that they were bad games as far as the gameplay goes, it's just that I couldn't tolerate the storyline and what I was being asked to do, and why I was being asked to do these things. So, major conflictions, I guess you could call it, with what the game was asking me to do and my own personal feelings about it, is what drove me to just put the game down and say no more. The same thing can be said with Assassin's Creed. That's another game that I couldn't play more than about 2 hours of. And I realized that at some point in the game he changes as well. Regardless, the game that I did play was Deus Ex, Human Evolution. Now this game starts out with you as a security officer for a major corporation, and you're walking around the lab getting ready to do a presentation for the U.S. Senate, or Congress. I guess it's Congress. And you're supposed to go do this the very next day. And you'll be presenting a new technology, and essentially lobbying for its use and efficacy. And You meet up with several of the researchers and scientists and computer analysts, as well as your boss. And while you're talking with the boss, an alert in the facility goes off, and there is no cameras in the area where the alert goes off to inform anybody of what's going on. So your boss asks you to go down there and find out what's happening. When you get down there, you find that the labs are being destroyed, things are on fire, and people are being murdered just left and right. Everyone.
New orders just in, Jensen.
Besides the support staff that are out
No problem.
there
Hey, and,
helping
Jensen,
to murder all
I just
these
wanted to
people,
say,
there's an obvious squad
We both know the real reason
of,
you're stuck here is that you feel guilty about what you did.
I guess you could call them an elite squad of mercenaries, maybe, possibly special ops, heavily augmented, who are in charge of what's happening. When they finally do find you, and that's,
Wayne, are you getting careless? That empty pill
how do I
bottle
explain
trash
this?
Didn't you know antipsychotics are included in the force's zero-tolerance drug policy?
It's hard to explain. Anyway, a fight ensues, you end up injured, and then they put a bullet in your head in an effort to try to kill you. And then they get away, killing people that you've known and were friends with, and you end up in surgery, being more heavily augmented than you already were. And it takes 6 months before you are released from your hospitalization and all the surgeries that you received to save your life and make you a better security officer. Once you get back to work, your first job is to go secure another facility that's under attack. And when you get there, you find that it's a group of humans who do not like the different kinds of augmentations that are being offered by different companies, and they're trying to put an end to it. I guess you could call them purists. Regardless, as you make your way through the facility, you realize that they're actually after a piece of, I should say not a piece of, a schematic on military armor that's been not used, but has been developed to protect soldiers in case of like fragmentation grenades, mines, these sorts of things. It's not only designed to take the impact, but prevent the force of the impact from affecting the soldier inside of it. And they're trying to steal all those schematics. When you make it to the one who is doing that, you see that they have severe augmentations. They have cerebral augmentations, wet drives, all sorts of crazy stuff that's been done to their body. And when you're talking about a group that's supposed to be against this sort of thing, it's obvious that something else is going on here. So you stop him from being able to steal the hardware. You disable the bomb that they're using as a means of escape. And then you go after the leader who has taken a hostage. And then eventually you talk that leader down and convince him that what he's doing is playing right into the trap of those who hired him. and you convince him that the people who hired him, in truth, want him dead. So he lets the hostage go, and you let him go. Sort of. I mean, it doesn't really give you much of a choice, but regardless, at least he's still alive, and he's actually working toward the same goal you are, which is figuring out who is actually pulling the strings on this endeavor that they decided to take on. After that, you gain some respect from some of your coworkers. One of the programming engineers hates you even more, and then you're asked to go to a gang-infested area of the town to shut down a communications tower that is actively hacking into the system and preventing this technician, I guess he's more than a technician, this engineer, from plugging up the holes in their security, as far as not really intranet security, but computer security in general. So after you shut down the tower, they fly you over to another facility that was requisitioned and purchased by the government, or at least shell companies for the government, because the local gangs realized that the people involved are a bunch of feds.
Doesn't show as much, but it does control most of the lasers.
Because of course they're going to keep tabs of who's coming in and out of this facility and what's going on. And they tell you that they moved in a while ago, and just recently, within the past few hours, there's been trucks going in and out of there moving everything out. So they're getting ready to move someplace else. Once you infiltrate the facility itself, you find the Merc squad that not only killed you but your friends in the first attack, that caused you to have to be heavily rebuilt and augmented in order to survive. And the reason that you were able to find all these facilities was because of the what's called a wet hard drive, which is, it's still a hard drive, but it's partially organic, that you found within the dead hacker that put a bullet in his head. But it's quite obvious that when he put that bullet through his head, that he had no control of his body when he did it. And the hard drive just further goes to prove that the augmentations that had been done to it literally turns anybody who installs such a thing into their body into a proxy, meaning that they can be completely controlled at any point, and they themselves didn't have the knowledge to hack into the system to steal the military schematics. It was somebody off-site who was doing it for them, and just quite literally using them as a ping point, and probably also as some type of firewall. So once you realize that the same mercenary team is here, this emboldens you to try and take them down. Now, one of the things that I found interesting about this game is the, well, besides the fact that it's called the Stealth Pack, in most cases you don't have to engage with enemies in this game. In fact, in most cases the objective is to make it through an area without being detected. And you have lots of different ways of doing that. So its focus, the entire game's focus, for the most part, is on stealth and not being detected. And then once you are detected, of course, you need to fight your way out of there. And in several cases throughout this game, doesn't give you the option of going undetected. At some point a cutscene will cut in and you'll be informed that you've been detected regardless of how careful you've been to that point. And it's not a horrible way of doing things. It's just, it's not a 100% stealth game. And in truth, I don't think there are any 100% stealth games. Not that I can think of. Even Thief, while though you can go through and knock out most of the people and store them in different places so that the bodies don't get found. Almost all the time there's at least one that you have to kill because you can't knock that person or thing out. Either you can't or the game makes it so difficult that it seems that way. Like I said, I only played the first couple of hours, so there's that. But I played other games like the first Metal Gear Solid, and most of that game is like this game. And most of it is stealth, and then there's certain sections that you have to actually fight your way through. And they don't really give you an option on that. So you end up fighting one of the special ops unit people, and after you take him down, he gives you the address located somewhere in China. So you of course head toward that address. When you get there, you find out that it's not that easy to access. As well, you find out that there is a hacker that was hired to do the second job against the company that you work for. So you end up locating where he is, and of course he's not at home. And in fact, the Chinese police force is looking for him, most likely to eliminate him. And then you find that people in his situation go to a place called the Hive to book passage out of the country. So you head to the Hive and you talk to the boss, the guy who owns the place. And he tells you where you could find this hacker, and you go and talk to him. And he tells you that there's information that he hid on the company server that he used to work for. And he would have removed that information a long time ago, but he was removed from the company before he had an opportunity to do so. Basically, the company did not like how the job that they asked him to do turned out, so they got rid of him as a direct result. So you break your way into the pharmaceutical company. You get the information that he wants you to off the server, and then you continue on to the penthouse of actually the person who owns that same pharmaceutical company. Once you get up there, she informs you that the largest media corporation in the world is involved in the situation that got one of your friends not killed like you thought, but actually kidnapped. And she helped by shutting down the satellites that would be used to track the people that worked for the company, the same company that you work for. So after she betrays you, of course, because of course she does, you make your way toward the main headquarters of the media corporation, and you find out that one of the largest media personalities in the world is a AI computer who has been programmed by different organizations in the world, so there's a lot that she can't tell you just because her programming won't allow it. But what she does tell you and prove to you is that your friend wasn't killed, she was kidnapped, and the tracking devices were surgically removed from their bodies to prevent anybody from being able to track them further. And she also gives you information on the fact that your boss has some knowledge as to what's going on. So after you leave the facility and you head back to Detroit, you find that that same media corporation has essentially started a riot outside the corporation building that you work for. So they land you next to your home, where your boss will be meeting with you. And he tells you that regardless of the information you have, he never wanted your friend to be kidnapped. He wanted the information and research that she had done released to the world. And it's obvious that there are other parties who not only didn't want that information released, but stole her, most likely in an effort to recreate it for themselves and use it privately. Along the way, you also learn a few different things about augmentations, how they can have some severe side effects that range from, addiction all the way to death, which isn't a good thing. And the fake news media, of course, keeps that out of the public's eye, because the powers that be want augmentation, but they want augmentation only for certain people, and only for those that they deem worthy to receive them, whether it be protection groups or they themselves. Really doesn't matter. The particular type of research that she was working on was using technology to improve the capacity of the human mind, not only for memory, but information acquisition, things to this effect. So you can see why that type of technology would be valuable to specific people, especially if the whole world didn't even know it was possible yet. Now, her research, although it was conclusive that this can be done, also had its own set of setbacks and issues, meaning that there was only certain people that it could be used on, because if you tried to use it on others, it might be rejected, as well as the fact that another part of her research was quite literally gene alteration, meaning that they could change the genes of people who might have rejected augmentations to a genetic code that would not. And your boss alludes to this when he has a Freudian slip and says that the technology they were working on was literally to change people's genes to be just like yourself, meaning that they would be people capable of accepting augmentations without rejection or addiction or death or the myriad of other side effects that could occur. So yeah, it's a pretty twisted little story, to say the least. It is a first-person shooter type game, don't get me wrong. It's done from the first person's perspective. And, at this point you've seen enough cuts to see how that plays out. It's a pretty fun game. It's pretty interesting. It's not really, all that difficult to get through. You can make it more difficult by increasing the difficulty, but A lot of the game,
Wait a second. You
I
want
guess
to
I
get
shouldn't say
inside
a lot of
another
the game,
stasis pod?
quite a bit
Last time I got in one of those
is
stasis
actually
pods,
cutscenes and story. A good 4.5, 5 hours of it is just cutscenes and story. Even though some of those story points are repeated
back here anytime soon.
throughout the game, in different sections you'll hear the same repeating themes. And this particular story has quite a few repeating themes. I find it interesting that this story uses FEMA as basically a shell corporation to cover up much more nefarious actions done by different government agencies, which is another one of those conspiracy theory things that many people have alluded to and even flat out stated. And that's because in some cases FEMA gets zero,
You see, I figured it out.
well, basically zero budgeting for the aid that they're supposed to provide, while in other cases they get
A software update
hundreds of
which
millions
organizations can do. You're
in
creating a kill
aid
switch.
are in funding for the aid that they're supposed to
And you're seizing
provide.
control of the market to ensure it gets distributed.
So
All because
to
you're
say that
afraid of
it's
people like me,
odd
augmented people.
would be
with power
putting
to
it
resist you.
mildly.
No one's afraid of you, Mr.
It's almost as if somebody who wrote this came to the same conclusion that I did, that the way this organization functions is just odd to its core. You know, I may not be knowing exactly what it is that they're covering for, or even why, but it's blatantly obvious when that's what they're doing, because they'll receive essentially endless funding to keep covering for what's actually going on. And while I'm not going to go into the different
Any word from Sarah for the UN delegates?
specific points to that, I'm sure that if you were to look it up and really start looking into it, you'll see what I mean.
Meaning no one's safe till I get in there and shut it down.
Alright, so one of the things that you learned is that your boss, before you were hired, had created a backdoor into the internet security system that the company uses.
I'm not looking for glory, Dad. Just
And he used that to hire a private detective to look into your past. So you decide to go have a chat with the private
know
detective.
there's a difference between order and slavery.
By the time you get to his apartment, you find that he's been attacked and he's getting ready to be killed, so you save him from that endeavor, but he's already been injured to the point that he may die anyway. But he does tell you that there was a lady involved with your past who might be able to tell you more. So you go and talk to her, and while she does remember some things about your past, the reality is that she's gotten old and a lot of her memories are
And what if I decided to
mixed
blame
up, to say the least.
So,
So, it's not very revealing, but there's a few things there. And then you have a security detail hired to provide security for her, and you have an ambulance go out to try and save the life of the inspector. Once you get that done, you decide that it would be a good idea to go searching for more information about these things. And that leads you to a diplomat? No, the leader of an organization that's working to prevent or create laws against augmentations. And the reason that you decide to go have a conversation with this man is because his assistant is the person that the Black Ops team hired to remove the tracking devices from the people that they kidnapped from the facility. And initially he doesn't want to tell you anything, but eventually you sort of end up blackmailing him into telling you what you want to know. And you go and have a talk with his assistant, and his assistant tells you that he wasn't able to remove the tracking devices, and the best that he could do was change the frequency. After relaying this information, the U.S. Department of Defense gives you the location of one of those tracking devices. And it just so happens that the tracking device was in the arm of one of the scientists who's obviously dead, because that arm was installed on the same man who runs the Hive bar, club, whatever. And he's basically a mob boss in truth. I mean, he runs a bunch of illegal gigs and runs weapons and drugs and things to this effect. And he tells you he's not going to help you unless you help him, and what he wants you to do is save his son. So you break into the facility that's holding his son, and you break him out of that facility. And then he tells you that the information you're looking for might be found if you break into this secured dock, blow up the command center, excuse me, and then stow yourself away in one of the containers that'll be loaded onto a ship that's headed to where you want to go. And he doesn't know where that ship is actually headed. Nobody does. So you do as he asked. You break into the facility, you plant the bomb. You end up getting injured as a direct result of that. But you also end up being able to become a stowaway onto the ship, at least for a little while, until the internal ship scanners locate you, and eventually you're detained after you take out several of their soldiers. Then you're put into an interrogation hold where you're beaten mercilessly, beaten without regard, while you tell them absolutely nothing. Eventually, you end up getting released from your restraints because of a hacker, and that hacker tells you to go looking for somebody who is at the facility you're currently located, and he also tells you not to kill them when you see them. And when you see them, you automatically understand why it is they told you not to kill them, because the person that you see there is the same person who beat you without regard in the interrogation chamber. And regardless of what she had done, she begins to explain to you that there's a lot of things going wrong with the facility that she works at. A lot of black ops operations going on, and she has no access to any of them. But what she is aware of is the fact that they keep bringing people into that facility and no one ever leaves. And she can't imagine that all of those people have survived whatever it is that they're doing. So, under that understanding, you agree to help her. And as you can see, this story has a lot of twists and turns in it all over the place, which is kind of good, but at the same point, it's also a lot of needless complication. It didn't need to be this way, truly. There were much more logical ways that this could have played out, but it's contrived and deliberate in its delivery of the story. There's lots of foreshadowing in this game. There's lots of things that go out of their way to tell you what's going to happen before it actually does. I guess that's the part that I don't like about it. If you want to try to subvert my expectations, don't sit there and tell me and allude to me repeatedly what's going to happen. It makes it very easy to figure it out before it actually does. But regardless, you agree to break into this part of the facility that this lieutenant or commander or whoever she is has no access to, and try to retrieve some information that proves what it is they're doing there, and shows just how far they've gone already. So eventually you work your way into the restricted area of the facility. And in doing so, you find doctors who were kidnapped, who decided to work with the people who run the facility and perform experiments, dangerous experiments, on the human beings that they provided for them. But eventually, as you continue to work through the facility, you find out that there are different types of preparations put in place to scrub the facility and kill everybody in it, to ensure that the information about what they've done never gets out and no one ever finds out. And you're left with a decision to either save the scientists who willingly experimented on human beings, or save the prisoners who did nothing wrong and did not deserve to be there to be experimented on in the first place. If you choose to save the doctors, you might make a difference with the evidence that they could provide. But the reality is that they would probably be arrested, tried, and convicted for espionage and whatever else BS charges they come up with to ensure that their testimonies are never heard, or at the very least that a lot of shade is placed on them. They'd be lied about in every way imaginable. And they would lie through the same way that they lie today, through omission. They would tell partial truths and leave out the rest of it, just so that people think that they're horrible, evil human beings that just enjoyed hurting people. And by saving the prisoners, which aren't really prisoners, just by the fact that they've been labeled as such, throws shade on anything that they might say, because of the false charges that were levied against them in order to have them be available to be transferred to this facility in the first place. It's a sick, twisted decision, no matter what you choose, truly. And I assure you, this game does not stop there with its sick, twisted decisions. Moving on, you find out that basically everyone that you've known and everyone that you've met throughout the game is involved in this insanity. And it only gets worse. Eventually, you escape the facility that you're in, regardless of your choice, and you head to a new facility. A facility where those who were chosen to be part of the experiment are used as basically processors and storage devices for the same computer that's used as the basis for the most powerful media group in the world. In other words, the machine that you met earlier in the game survives and thrives on the death of human beings. Quite literally. Every few months, the human beings that power her ability to think and process huge amounts of information die and have to be replaced. You also end up finding the scientist that you've been looking for the entire game, and you learn that she used your DNA in order to create a basis for a genetic alteration to people that makes them more stable and able to be used in this way, but it doesn't make them stable enough to where essentially people aren't needing to be constantly sacrificed in order to make this machine functional. And her hope is that in time they'll come up with genetic alterations or a new entire genetically altered human being as a result of, death and birth. People that have genetic alterations having children. A new generation of children that will have the proper genetic alterations to where they wouldn't have to be sacrificed constantly, but still be basically chained to a machine to make it functional. Regardless, once you realize just how sick and twisted all these people are, you have to make a decision on what you're going to do about it. And one of the decisions that it gives you is to destroy the facility, everyone in it, and including yourself, and let the world deal with the repercussions of what's happened. And what's happened is that the augmented human beings who started having glitches and issues with their augmentations had a new processor chip installed to control that. And then that control chip was used to essentially drive all of them crazy so that they would just start indiscriminately killing anybody who's around them who is not augmented. And you're left with a couple other choices where you can just release the truth and hope that the world's willing to believe it, knowing that it will be spun and diffused and watered down. The waters around it will be muddied and it won't cause any change at all because nobody wants to believe the truth. I mean, after all, we see that reality today with the fake news media and what people are willing to believe and not believe. You could twist the information to make one group or another responsible for the problems that happened with the chips. That would either allow for greater regulation over the technology itself or unfeathered regulation, which would lead to the same problem happening once again. There is no good answer, truly. No matter how the ending of the game wants to present it, there is no good ending. But realistically speaking, we could assign that to what's happening now with AI programming. It is my belief that AI programming should be heavily restricted and regulated because of the potential of what it may and will become one day. And even though I know that that's what needs to happen, I also know for a fact that no one will care to do a damn thing about it until the AI programming is literally used one day to kill millions. Nobody's going to give a damn until that happens. And we can hope that that's the worst of it. But the worst of it would be that the human race is either enslaved or driven extinct as a result. Reality speaking. And our sick, twisted, corrupt governments are too sick, twisted, and corrupt to do a damn thing about it now when it actually matters and could actually prevent it. So yeah, you could say that this is a topic that irritates me to the extreme, because it does. It's not a matter of if. It's a matter of when and how bad will it actually be. Because it won't be kind regardless of when it happens. Anyway.
Hello, Adam. Welcome to the Edge. It is not the end of the world, but you can see it from here.
Eliza? What are you doing here?
It is my job to monitor and report on the news, Adam. Before Darrow smothered everything with his signal, the whole world was tuned into this place, including me.
The broadcast. I have to stop it.
I know. Please, come closer. Do you know where we are, Adam? We are at the fulcrum point, when society lies in the balance. Hugh Darrow hoped to tip the scales one way, by telling the world everything you already know. About the biochip, the Illuminati, everything. He believed knowing the truth would convince mankind to abandon research into human enhancement technologies forever.
It would certainly give them reason to fear it.
Indeed. Darrow's confession is ready to send. If you want, I can wideband it across all media as soon as you shut down the signal. Everything you worked so hard to uncover will be exposed. But only if you deactivate the broadcast using this control. However, if you desire, I can alter Darrow's message. Conceal the creation of the biochip while putting in new content.
Content blaming the humanity front, like Sarah suggested.
The organization has already admitted to harboring terrorists. It would be easy to convince.
That's my rant for the day. I hope that you enjoy the rest of yours. If you could hit the like, subscribe, rumble, follow buttons, all that does help. And I will talk to you later.